Welcome to Draft Sickos, the show where we cover everybody from the biggest names to the deepest of sleepers. I am Maxwell Baumbach. I am one of the hosts of this podcast, and I'm joined by the real star of the show, Stephen Gillespie. Stephen, how are you doing tonight?
Maxwell, I'm doing great, brother. I'm glad to be here. I just scarfed down like a burning hot slice of pizza, so I am firing on all cylinders right now, ready to go. Got a very deep lineup of prospects that we're going to get into, man, and I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. What kind of pizza did you go with?
Well, I don't know if we want to do free advertisement, but I'm a big like works pizza, with
Yes, sir.
all the
Yes,
toppings,
sir.
all the meats, all the veggies. Yep. Big fan of good sauce, good cheese, good crust. But yeah, I'll spoil it. I like Papa John's as kind of my weapon of
Okay,
choice whenever I get pizza. But shout out
got
to
it.
I like all pizza, so it's whatever to me. I'm
I'm
not
the same
like,
way. It drives me nuts, and people are like, "Oh yeah, like this chain pizza, it's really bad compared to my nice local chain, my nice local pizza place, the mom and pop."
yeah.
It's like, of course, yeah, of course, it's not as
Yeah.
good. It's chain. You got to appreciate it. Pizza's pizza. Pizza's rarely bad. I don't want to say it's never bad. I've had a couple bad pies in my day, but for the
Yeah.
most part, all pizza's good. As far as the chains go, I'm a big Domino's man. It was
Okay.
my daughter's second birthday yesterday. We had a huge
Well,
party
happy
for her.
birthday.
Yeah. Today, she had a tricycle yesterday, so she's been all about the tricycle. But yeah, we did Domino's for that. The two toppings for $6 on a medium pizza is tough to beat.
Yeah.
Weirdly, she is into ham and black olive pizza, which the
I
trial and
respect that.
error that we went for a 2-year-old to find out that that's the kind of pizza she likes, quite a process. But
My
that's her
oldest
thing.
daughter is a big fan of black olives in general, but especially
Yep.
on pizza. When I get the works and she'll
Yeah.
eat like a cheese or whatever, she's like, "Daddy, can I get some of your black olives?" Of course, baby, you can have my black olives. I don't
That's
care.
so funny. Kids,
Yeah.
man, kids are crazy with food preferences, and I was no
Yes.
exception. So I can't complain about my daughter being like that. So let's get into it though. So we are continuing the prospect preview series. This week we have part one, and I'm going to
Uh,
emphasize that right now. Part one of the top incoming freshmen. So if there's a freshman that you're really high on, and you're like, hey, where was he? We're probably getting to him next week, and we're going to kind of next week too. I think we're going to sprinkle in like a couple sleeper guys that we both like and things like that. So, and we've got a couple of those in here too this week, to be fair. So, just stay tuned. If you're not hearing a guy's name, it does not mean we do not like them. We are just gonna get to him a bit later on. So, let's start out with Justin Edwards. He is a 6'8" freshman who's going to be at Kentucky. I believe he's 20 already. So he's going to be this year's
in
guy that
December,
everyone
I
in
think
December.
he's
That's what it
20 in
was.
December. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So he's going to be this year's. He's older, right? Like he's going to be
Grandpa.
Yep, yeah. He's that guy in this year's class. But we both really like Justin Edwards, so I'm going to let you kind of take the lead on him. But yeah, I'm a fan. So what are your thoughts on Justin Edwards coming into this year? 6'8", Kentucky wing.
I mean, besides from the fact that he's almost as old as I am in my early 30s. I mean, I like him a lot. He's a fun prospect. Another lefty, probably the premier lefty shooter within this draft class. Very beautiful shooting stroke. Has a knack for finding openings within the defense. Maxwell, dangerous in transition. A very good athlete. I'm kind of curious. Maybe we could talk a little bit about how you view the athleticism. I don't think that he's like a tier one, like top 1%er or anything like that, but definitely very good. Sweet touch on the floaters. I think his handle is solid, very active on the glass, shows some good cutting. Not the most amount of bend with the basketball in his hand, but sufficient enough to get to his spots. Can get wild with the shot selection, I think, especially on drives and in traffic. I think that's where he's going to get into the most amount of trouble. Pretty good at staying with his man on the defensive side of the ball. Can settle kind of playing for behind a little bit and relying on the reach versus sliding his feet. I think that's probably just going to be like a coaching thing. And then I think he'll be able to switch between through the 2 through 4s. And I think that he will really pop as a defender and probably on the offensive end a little bit when he grows into that frame. It still looks like he shot up and still working on the filling out. So I'm interested to see, physically and biomechanically mechanically how he continues to develop as a player.
Yeah, I think you touch on a lot of the big stuff. I think for me, it really starts with just his ability to move at 6'8". I did a show with Adam Spinella about this, and it was so good that he got a job. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, congratulations, by the
Yeah,
way, Coach
congrats to Coach
Spence. Yeah.
Spins. That is, it was not that got him the job. It was years of hard work and a very strong resume. So congrats to Coach Spence. But one of the things we talked about in there is just how fast and nimble and strong he is instinctually. I think on defense, like some of the plays that he's able to make is a ball tracker really stand out. Like he is so sharp with how quickly he'll see developments in another player's handle with like how they're putting it on the floor,
Yep.
what direction they're going to go, where they're going to face. If a guy's going to like show their back to him real quick and try to turn around, like he knows what guys are going to do. And he's so fast with his hands that he's really able to get into players' handles a lot. And then he has that just straight line speed to kind of get into passing lanes, start the break, and become a real threat in transition. So he's just able to get to balls that a lot of guys can't get to. But I think especially at the point of attack, I think that's where he really stands out. More so covering smaller players. I'm a little bit holding back, I guess I would say, on him kind of guarding up to the 4 at the NBA. I think at the college level, he'll 100% be able to do that. But I think in college, it's going to take him a minute there. He was a guy that prior to this whole Alex R being really great thing was like the number one guy on my board. I'm going to leave him there. I always like to, say, give me a reason. With Justin Edwards, I think the offense is really enticing, but it's not perfect. And that's the biggest thing with this class is if these guys were kind of more perfect and fully fleshed out, there would be a lot more excitement about the class. I think with Edwards, what really stands out is his shot making. So at Emotap last year, played a really, you're going to hear my daughter a little bit. Let's see if she mentions earlier, she was saying she does not like Steve Martin, was something she kept saying earlier because he's in a YouTube video. She loves banjos. So she watches this YouTube video where people are playing banjos and Steve Martin's in it. And as soon as Steve Martin comes up, she asks to turn it off. And we say, you don't like Steve Martin. And now she just says,
gotta get her to watch The Jerk
all the time. Yeah, The Jerk is a phenomenal movie. So hopefully that'll change her opinion. Yep, there you go in the background. Don't like Steve Martin.
Steve Martin. Kyle, turn the TikTok camera on.
So with back to the Justin Edwards offensive profile, he was a really good off the dribble scorer at Emotap. Yeah. So he didn't take a ton, like the volume wasn't crazy. He took 17 pull-up threes, but he made 35% of them. And then this is all per synergy, great partners, by the way. And then on his pull-up twos, he took 39 and he made 42.6% of them, which is a really strong number. And those kind of mid-range and three-point pull-up scoring numbers were a big part of why I think as a group we were kind of able to get collectively ahead of Brandon Miller coming into the year last year, was just those strong pull-up shooting numbers. Got a bit of a bag to get where he wants on the floor, some nice stop-start, but just really able to get up and shoot over guys in that part of the court. And that really stands out as his signature skill. He is able to finish above the rim. I think he is much more comfortable going off of 2 than off of 1. Like in transition, sometimes you'll see him go up off of 1, but I think generally he can like lose a half second sometimes, which doesn't matter as much in high school. But when you get to the NBA and everyone's fast and everyone's long, just taking that extra half second to gather is going to be a bit of an issue. But because he can get off of 1 foot, I'm hoping that's something that we start to see him lean into a little bit more. The touch at the rim isn't spectacular. The rim numbers in the half court may be a little lower than where you'd like him to be. I think the attacking can also be a little bit upright in the half court, where like if he were a little more low to the ground and getting better angles just on his drive, I think he'd probably be a bit more efficient and get all the way to the rim a little bit more. He also has that handle through contact issue that a lot of guys in this class seem to have, where gets bumped up because he's upright, doesn't have that same level of power and balance in his stride. So that needs to come along a little bit better. I think his passing is okay. I think he's capable of it. He's not like crazy turnover prone. But I do think that he needs to better anticipate help. with every facet. Like whether it's, hey, this is where a guy is rotating. Hey, that guy can get into that passing lane, or hey, someone's going to come dig on you right now. Like those are the kind of things he has to be ready for. And he's not always looking for his teammates either. Gets a little too locked into his own scoring attempt. So I do want to see him round out his attacking, round out the passing. But ultimately, zoom out. This is a player that I really like. This guy who's 6'8", who can really shoot it, can really defend, plays with a high motor, and has very strong instincts defensively. And those guys with those defensive instincts, I feel like I'm a little more likely to believe in them to pull out that kind of development on the offensive end as well. So, I mean, if you're looking at a guy who's, 3-and-D with a mid-range shot-making bag, it's a really nice starting point for a player. And I think in a class like this, that's, at least top 5 value coming into the year for me. So, I'm a fan.
Yeah, and you touched on a lot of great things, Maxwell, as you typically do. I'm kind of curious though. I think that the scoring is going to be what gets him. That's going to be kind of like his calling card, right?
Mhm.
I don't know how you feel about him growing as a playmaker. Like, what do you think the kind of margin is for someone who's just like score first to, okay, I'm an offense in of myself because I'm a phenomenal scorer, but then they can kind of open up their court vision a little bit over time. Like, say, I know this is going to be like the most extreme comparison that we can make here, but Jason Tatum wasn't renowned for
Yeah.
playmaking, but then
Mhm.
over time, growing into his strength, his body still was growing from college to the NBA. Score first guy, I would say, like a total package score, eventually now can facilitate a lot. Do you think that there is a developmental pathway for Justin Edwards to be able to do something similar?
I think he can. I think with a lot of these guys, there still has to be like a level of innate feel, which like I feel like he showed a solid level of feel in high school. And like I think so I'm not like I don't say like I'm not a big high school film guy, but I think it's really
Sure.
important to watch high school film to understand like what a player is good at, what a player feels comfortable with. Uh, it gives you a better picture of their context in college. So if a guy, wasn't used in a particular role, but that they have these other strengths to their game, it can be, really helpful. Or even a guy like AJ Griffin was a big case where like didn't get to do a ton on the ball at Duke, was super complimentary, but like just having that outstanding shooting track record coming into college, it's like, okay, well, maybe he didn't take a million shots, but we know that he's really efficient because he's always been incredibly
Yeah.
efficient. Um, I think what he's going to have going for him is that with guys like Jason Tatum or like Kawhi Leonard, right, is like another
Yeah.
one of these guys where he wasn't thought coming into the league. He's like, oh yeah, you can like run an offense through this guy. They both kind of had like their like turnover was a little bit in college, but they were still able to see the floor and pass. So I think that's going to be interesting to see with Edwards. Like, is he at least producing assists? Like, is he at least a guy that even if there are mistakes here and there, the team is comfortable running the offense through? So I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves and say like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I think he can be that, or no, I don't think he can. I think seeing him in the college context is going to help us go a long way with that. Um, I'm going to be pretty optimistic about him though, just because, like I said, I think that he does see the game pretty quickly and have a good understanding of other players' tendencies and what they're looking to do. So that gives me a good bit of hope for him, more than it would
And
for most guys.
yeah, and I think too the international play that we got to see him kind of like take the game away from that high school film that you were kind of referencing, seeing what he looks like against some of the high level, highly touted prospects from all over the world. I think that he fared pretty nicely and had a lot of spots where he looked like a very capable prospect and certainly deserving of like say a number one consideration within this draft class for sure, brother.
Yeah, yeah. So what kind of was my number one. Probably gonna stay my number one just because I don't want to bump him down. But that's where I
Yeah.
had him. Do you have him in sort of a similar spot?
Yeah, I have him number 1. I'm with you that I have Star kinda peeking around the corner from that number 2 spot. We got a couple guys that we're gonna talk about later on in this show that I'm not ruling out from being a number 1 prospect. I feel really good about my starting 5 within this class, Maxwell. I don't know how
Mhm.
you feel about yours. I mean, I think
Yeah,
they're probably pretty similar, but
yeah.
I think in the early going, I'm already starting to feel more comfortable with this draft class and what the narrative kinda preceded it to be.
For sure. Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. Another guy that we both like is Jacoby Walter,
Mm,
who's going to be playing at Baylor this season. Baylor just Lots of good guards again. Lots of
Yes.
good talent one through three on this roster, and then you got Jalen Bridges back too. Damachachua is still there too, which is like that dude. I feel like people
Everyday
keep
John.
forgetting about that guy. Yeah, like Everyday John is awesome, and like he had like that injury year and whatever. But like I feel like people keep being like, oh yeah, Baylor, and like they don't have much of that. It's like, nah, they got Everyday John. They're fine.
Yep.
So Jacoby Walter, 6'5", 180. He has a really good build for a player his age. Like those arms look long, like looks like one of those guys that, if you need somebody to sit in the back seat of a car and open both doors at the same time, Jacoby Walter could be your guy. Pretty strong for his age too. Like not one of these guys who looks like he's going to get pushed around a whole lot. Obviously every young player has, room to fill out, but with Jacoby Walter, he's not a guy who's going to come into college and have any real physicality issues. The biggest thing that stands out about him is his shot making. He is a genuine tough shot maker. Again, mid range and behind the arc. Shoots a really soft
Yep.
ball. Gets it out quick when it's off the catch, and he's ready to unload. Like
Mm-hmm.
when he knows that he has room from that defender off the catch, that thing is going up, and it's going up fast. Lots of confidence and poise, and that's what I call that superstar release, where it's really high up. A lot of the time,
Yep.
difficult to contest and get into for a player his size. Going to the rim, it's a little trickier. He draws a lot of fouls there. He's not going to shy away from contact. Touch numbers not great. Not super explosive vertically either. Not like totally below the rim or anything like that, but doesn't always really fly through traffic or anything.
Yeah.
On the defensive end, the last thing I want to touch on is the handle and passing. I think it's really interesting. The
Yep.
passing in particular, that dude can whip that ball. Like he'll make a
Mm-hmm.
read, and that ball is like there in a heartbeat, which I love. I love fast, accurate passers, like guys who see stuff and they just get it there. Jacoby
No
Walter is going
hezzy.
to give you some of
Yep.
that. Yep. And I think because of that scoring gravity, like, there's going to be times where he's drawing doubles, because if he pump fakes, guys are going to have to close out hard on it. He's going to get inside. He's going to scramble a defense. And when that happens, like that's a great tool to have at your disposal. And I think if you want to make an argument for him above a guy like Justin Edwards, you say, yeah, maybe Justin Edwards has that extra size, but I'm going with Jacoby Walter because I like how far ahead his passing is at this point in time. On defense, I think he is going to play a little bit bigger than his height. I know it's 6'5". Maybe he ends up being a little shorter than that, because a lot of guys typically do when they go to the combine. Because he's as long and as tough as he is, I do think he's going to bring a little bit more positional versatility. I like him as a guard because
Yeah.
he has that passing in his game, but I think that he can like scale up on wings a little bit more than somebody, if you're saying, oh, he's just a two guard. Like I think he's going to do better than a lot of guys that get that kind of labeling and distinction. He's hard to shake. Footwork is pretty good, but he's just a good mover and he's really long, so it's tough to get him off you. And then I think off the ball, he knows what he's doing as well. Stays aware. Where are you at with Jacoby Walter? Because he's a guy
Uh,
that I think has kind of moved up, kind of like from where like those like really early mocks to now. It seems like he was the guy that people wanted to film, watched him light up Geico Nationals, and were like, oh, all right, hold on. And he's sort of risen
yeah.
up.
Yeah. There's some real juice to his game, man. And I think that a a combo guard is almost has kind of gotten like a backhanded compliment kind of
Mm-hmm.
connotation, but I think that he exemplifies a combo guard in like the best of ways. He's very big for his size. When I see 6'5" Maxwell and I watch him play, the best way I can describe like his 6'5" is like if his height is a cup, it's like spilling over. Like he is as
Yeah.
6'5" as 6'5" can be, and he plays like it on the court, right? Can score at all three levels. I think that he has a tendency for shooting well beyond the 3-point line, which is very much in vogue for a lot of young players. He's a nightmare in transition, knows how to put really good English on the ball. I like his finishing craft, whenever he is on the break. The efficiency numbers from deep need some improvement. They vary at different spots, but the free throw shooting has been pretty consistent from a lot of places where you can go and get those numbers. So there's signs of touch consistency there. I do have some concerns with the shot, though, Maxwell, and I don't know how you feel about this. Some of the mechanics just feel a little bit off. I think it's like almost too compact. I think it's fixable, and I think that Baylor is going to kind of turn him into more of like a shooting steady guard. That the release point is there, but it's just I don't know, it kind of feels almost kind of boxy in some aspects, but that's just like picking like the tiniest of nits
Mhm.
within his game. The shot selection might be the biggest thing that he needs to improve upon. I
Yeah.
think that he kind of
Yeah.
settles for pull-ups, can drive to the rim, um, but pulls up a lot when like the defense is almost kind of like giving him a driving lane. Sometimes I think he kind of settles for some tough jumpers. The athleticism to me, Maxwell, is like more apparent on the defensive end, where you're kind of talking about how tough he can play as a defender. Has good feel for when to kind of poke the ball out. Has what I like to call smart hands, and the on ball footwork kind of loses lapses a little bit, but I think it's just mainly because he's leaning into that like I am the scorer role. But again, I love the commitment to Baylor because I think that we saw what that program did for a guy like Keontae George, and I almost feel like the exact same role is going to work out very
Yeah.
nicely for Jacoby.
I would agree, and I actually think Jacoby. I, I feel like I already have missed on Keontae George. Like he's been really
Yeah,
good so far. Um, I kind of feel a little better about Jacoby Walter coming in because I think he's positionally a little bit more defined. Like with
yeah,
Keontae, I worried about the quickness, guarding the ball on defense, and things like that, which I'm not really having those concerns with Jacoby Walter. So
no.
for what that's worth, I think he's coming to the year in a good spot. Do you think he's gonna like definitively be the guy on Baylor? Because it feels that way. I mean, they've got Ray J. Dennis, like they've got Langston
Yeah,
Love coming back, like they Jane Nunn is there now. Like they've got a lot of
yeah,
talent at that like 1 through 3 kind of position. Do you think there is any concern that like maybe like Reggie Dennis was like he was like 19-6 last year at
yeah.
Toledo? Like that dude can play. Like, do you think there's any chance that maybe his role gets diminished a little bit? Because I'm
I
kind of seeing
think
him as the
that
guy, but
I don't think that Baylor has really ever featured like the guy, you know what I mean? It's like a very
mhm.
egalitarian style of play. So, which again, I think is going to do wonders for Jacoby because I think if any scout that's worth their salt is going to say, I'm not worried about the scoring at all. Like the efficiency is a little bit crazy, but he's a young kid and he knows how good he is, and maybe he gets bored with the ball. But like the complementary stuff, like how does a defense scale up? How does a connective tissue game kind of scale up along with that? I think that if you can look at Jacoby grow in those areas at Baylor while still being like maybe grow in his efficiency, but still showing that he can get his shots up from all over the floor. I'm not necessarily worried about him being featured as the guy because we kind of know what he is as a scorer. What else does he have in his game? How does he complement and kind of make his teammates better alongside of him? That's very important for a guard in today's NBA, and I think that that's what the commitment to Baylor kind of signals to me is that he's taking his draft stock and draft process very seriously. Because if he just wanted to be featured as a guy, there are still very good high level programs so where he could do so. But I think he's going about it the right way by going to Baylor.
For sure, for sure. So let's get to Cody Williams next. Cody Williams is a
Mm.
guy that we've talked about off the year quite a bit. I think he's kind of a guy that we might be a little bit lower than consensus on to a degree.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know.
oh,
I don't
I
know.
think I am. So I'm a little lower on Cody
Okay.
Williams. So you can I'll go first, and then you talk him up so we can kind of find middle ground
Sure.
because I think there's a chance he's awesome. Like I do, I want to be completely clear. I think there's a chance he could be awesome. But here's the deal with Cody Williams. He's 6'8". He's going to be at Colorado. First off, love that. Love guys going to a school that like isn't like it's not a junkie school. You know what I mean? Like he's not going to crap state university or some school that is
Yeah.
always awful. He's going to a school that is at least competitive from a basketball front, but that a place he's
Corey
probably going to
always
play right away.
says Corey's always puts it best whenever he's like, "Yeah, when I'm watching UCLA beat up whoever the F State university,
Yeah.
that's where Cody is not attending, whoever the F
hmm
State university."
Yeah. So he's going to Colorado. So he's gonna have Tristan Da Silva to play off of, like KJ Simpson. Like there's real talent
Yep.
on this team, but also an opening for a guy who comes in with some real pedigree that could play right away. At 6'8", he is big, long, and he is poised. It's almost
Mhm.
like he's got like comes from a family where other people might have those similar traits, but he's his own
Yeah.
man, and he's a really talented player. So a lot of pace coming out of ball screens and very advanced vision for his size at six
Yep.
foot eight. very good at operating at different speeds, speeding up, slowing down, stop, start. And he's another one of those guys too, where like he's not a live wire vertically, but I do think he gets up a little bit better than you might expect because he's almost playing slower than he's capable of
Yeah.
in order to kind of get what he wants and manipulate things on the court. So it's like one of those things where it's like, you don't want to say sneaky athletic. It's just like, that's how he plays the game to win. Really good feel. And I think that when he does find somebody who's open, there is kind of like we mentioned, Jacoby Walster, that sense of urgency to get a player the ball when they do spring open. Really good with both hands inside and has very soft touch. Even on like floaters and shots where he's further away from the basket. Just preparing for this morning, I was going through some of the USA U19 footage and like almost like a little Leonard Miller-y on those shots where he'll be like 12 feet away, but he'll shoot a floater instead of a jump shot and it goes in. Like if it's just off the fingertips, like there's something to work with Cody Williams. My big concern is that I don't know how else he scores right now. A lot of his baskets come in transition. The jump shot results have kind of been inconsistent over time. Not the most willing outside shooter. Doesn't have this really strong pull-up track record based on the data that's available to me. So that's kind of my hang up, and we'll circle back to that in a second. Defensively, I like what he's doing. Good size, good ground coverage. Its point of attack does pretty well against just about anybody. He is kind of on the thinner side right now, but again, he's 18. He's going to fill out. Not too worried about it. He does move his feet really well. I feel like his feet are pretty good for a player his age as far as how he just slides. And again, off ball, the feel is there. My concern is is he like worthy of a one and done bet if he has shooting woes this year? And I want to put this in this context. Like last year, the two kind of like bigger wings that had like shooting concerns that went in the second round were Julian Phillips and Jordan Walsh are the two guys that I think of. I think with Julian Phillips, you're looking at like both of those guys had really good feel too, which is why I think this is kind of like an interesting comparison. Julian Phillips had like really good assist numbers. Jordan Walsh was like basically like running the show when he was at Link. So both guys that could operate with the ball in their hands, make good decisions. In Walsh's case, always a willing shooter, even if like the percentages weren't great. He wasn't a guy that was like super passive. With Julian Phillips, the bet was, hey, he's like super, super athletic. So if he just fills out his frame and the shot goes a little bit, we're in business. With Jordan Walsh, you're looking at a guy who's coming into the league with like an NBA body and really great NBA measurements, like 7'2" wingspan, really strong, going to be able to guard like 4 positions, pretty fast. So it's just like, hey, this is the guy where everything's there but the shot. With Cody Williams, he doesn't have Jordan Walsh's strength or physicality, and he doesn't have Julian Phillips' athleticism. So if the shot isn't there, is this still like a one and done guy? Is this a multi-year guy? And there's nothing wrong with him being a multi-year guy. I just think without the shot, the bet is a lot less interesting than some of the other wings we've seen in recent years.
I want to preface this by saying that Cody Williams is like the type of player that I fall for quicker than others, right? Like I think that we all kind of have that player type. We can all say like, I just like really, really good basketball players, but like there are different player types that lead up into really good basketball players. And being the size that he is listed at 6'8", having the handle that he does, being able to find the open man, having like a feel to the game that is very different from a lot of people. And again, we've talked about this before, Maxwell, but not every NBA player plays just like the other NBA players. Like they all have like their unique feel, right? And then you kind of get to your role players, and that's a whole nother conversation. But I think Cody Williams, he has such a unique feel for the game. He can make some really good passes, has like a herky jerky motion, loves to get to that Euro dribble when attacking the paint, can make live dribble reads and hit the opposite corner on drives. And I think that is a very unique skill set to have for someone as young as he is and has the frame that he does. He's hilariously long, it's a nice soft touch around the hoop. The jumper, like you mentioned, I have it in my notes as well, is going to be the biggest concern, but it has some good components to it. I think the things that do need fixed are it's a bit of a line drive. The arch isn't really there. And then I think the base is a little narrow, right? So if he can kind of widen that base, get a little bit more strength, I think that will help fix a lot of the issues, right? So some minor tweaks to that shooting motion, that shooting form, and I think the efficiency can improve a lot. And there goes his stock, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Really looks like he cares about defense. I like that he uses his length really well. I'm not going to sit here and try to build him up to be some kind of like Jordan Walsh-esque ball stopper or anything like that. But I think within a team concept, he plays pretty well, right? I think that he also is going to match up against Two's nice, really good closeout technique. Kind of hard to shake. He's not going to get plowed through, and again has solid off-ball awareness. I just, again, the high feel, the frame, all of those things are just going to be kind of really hard for me to just overlook. I have him in my top 10 because Highfield just travels well, and we've seen it too, where especially at that size. And I wrote about it last year in my Jalen Hood-Schifino piece. These guys get drafted way lower than they should, and this A to B transition, and maybe he is a 2-year guy. And like you're saying, Maxwell, maybe I'm kind of like putting him a little too high when he's going to be a multi-year guy. So was his brother, and his brother's doing all right. So these type of players normally hit, and they normally hit at a higher rate in which they are selected. They normally go to like that mid to late lottery range, and then they end up being like top 10 level talents. So that's how I'm treating Cody coming in, and I'm going to let him prove me wrong.
Well, it's funny because like these are kind of similar to the conversations I had last year with Nathan about Jordan Walsh and Anthony Black, where it was like we talked about it in the context of even guys like Delano Banton and Trenton Watford, who like maybe aren't as athletic, but at that size, like if you just know how to play, like you at least stick around the league. And like Jeremiah Robinson Earl's another guy like that. Like if you're just that big and you know what you're doing, like you don't really tend to be a bust in the traditional sense, where it's just like, oh, he's in and he's out. Like teams will keep betting on you, and you are, if nothing else, like a guy that they can plug and know won't get killed out there. And there's real value in being a guy that doesn't get killed out there. So we've got more players coming up. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. All right, so let's get into Isaiah Collier. Isaiah Collier, I think, is one of the toughest projections for me. This is a guy that I feel like I move up and down. Anytime I'm trying to reorganize my board, I'm like, I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing with this guy yet. He is listed at 6'4", 250 pounds. So he does look stocky in a good way for a guard, which I think is really important in this day and age. He's going to be at USC. We can talk about that roster fit in a little bit too. But he's going to come with like positional size for a modern point guard, like on the smaller side of the scale in this age where like everyone's 6'5". Like he's going to come in, reasonably sized with a good amount of heft on him. Like he's not going to come with the league and just get bullied and pushed around, which is big. Like how he attacks the basket, maneuvers and protects the ball well, has that wiggle and slither, like just kind of weaves right through the lane at times. He can be really fast when he sees that path to the basket. I like his craft and angles at the rim, and I like that he gets to the rim a lot too. On the outside, he's able to shoot it from NBA range, either off a pull up or off the catch. I think he really believes in his shot, and I think he's going to provide a little bit more advanced spacing than some other guards because of that. This is not a guy who's going to be toes on the line when it's a catch and shoot situation. He knows he can go a little bit behind and still send it home. I also think it gives him that really important, like just on-off versatility where like if he's playing next to a bigger playmaker, I think he's going to be totally fine in that context. As a passer, I think there is some really good creativity there. I think some of the dump offs that he delivers are like really well disguised. I can find some really interesting angles to loop the ball to guys when he gets around the basket. Some of the deliveries will be just a little bit unconventional where it's not, the craziest thing you've ever seen, but it's a little bit more advanced than like I saw the guy and I passed him the ball. Like what he does there. Off the ball at defense, I think he keys in pretty well, which is a thing I like to see, especially for a modern guard. I think if you are going to be one of these undersized guards, the defensive threshold is going to be pretty high. So he's going to do that. He's going to fight at the point of attack. He's not going to be a plow through target. My biggest concern with him is that I think he gets a little out of control at times. He can play a little bit too sped up. The handle will get away from him. Some of his passes get a little crazy. It feels like I would like if he changed speeds a little bit more, because sometimes he just goes at top speed, and when he does that, he's a
Yep.
little bit more prone to make mistakes. And there were times where I just felt like I wish he was a little bit more dominant. Like he felt a little too deferential for me in some of the games that I watched of him. But yeah, I think he's going to come in, top 10 for me. Kind of where in that pecking order can kind of vary day to day. But I do think he's going to have a good long NBA career. This is a good comment from Dirty Dancer. The 6'5" listing on Collier or gaslighting.
Yep.
That's good. Yeah, I don't think he's 6'5", but I think the USC fit could go a couple ways. I think with a guy like Kobe Johnson, who I
Yep.
like a lot at the very least. A guy like Boogie Ellis, who was tremendous
Yep.
last year, had his best college season by far. Bronny James is in the mix. Like his role might get eaten into a little bit, but I think at the same time, it could be a really nice developmental opportunity to not
Yeah.
have to take on all that load, learn from a veteran point guard, and kind of ease in. But where are you at with Isaiah Collier?
So I think that he's going to come in with good positional, good positional, I guess, size, like how you're saying. I think
Mm.
that the broad shoulders is what really stands out to me. Like if you just look at him, even though that he's not like this 6'5", 6'6", jumbo creator, I think that he's very strong build for a guard of his size. He likes to get to that mid range pull up a lot, which I think you kind of have to have if you're going to be that kind of undersized guard, to where you're not just at two levels of scoring, right? Like if you can get to that mid-range game, if you can get to a floater, that makes you extremely more difficult to guard, right? Has a nice kind of change of pace, I think, sometimes with the ball. Maxwell, I know that was one thing that you kind of noted, that he plays at top speed a lot. But in the games that where he did kind of show some change of pace, I think it really shakes the defense up a lot. But again, like you're saying, like he is a blur when he is in transition. Not afraid to get into the lane and can shoot against some really heavy contests. Nice vertical game too. So if we're looking at the strength, the quickness, some verticality for what we would call like a traditionally sized guard, I'm worried that he has a lack of an offhand game. Then I don't know if you kind of notice that as well,
Yeah.
which can plague some players in the NBA, as we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Playing fast sometimes gets him into tough shot attempts, just like you mentioned, can lead him to some very predictable angles. I don't know how many charges I saw that he took as a foul, because he very, very much so telegraphed where he wanted to go and how he wanted to get there. And a smart defender is going to be able to, take advantage of that. It also caused him to be a little bit loose with the ball and with his passes. Gets his shot altered and blocked more frequently than I would like to in some of the games that I saw as well. Although he does see the court well, right? So I don't know how you feel about these really fast guards who can play breakneck pace sometimes, and how many of their errors are going to be like, hey, why don't we just kind of rein it in a little bit? And
Mm-hmm.
boom, here is where you make that acceleration to really make the defense pay. He has got the capability to do a lot, but I kind of worry about that wild nature of his game. I don't have him top 10, and I know that a lot of places do. Uh, I have him 23rd on my board, right? And I know that that's a very like not popular preseason opinion of him coming in. I I like some other guards that we're going to talk about a little bit more, because I think that they have more feel than they do just like these physical gifts that Collier has, which I think is making him more enticing because he is undersized. So there's a lot of things kind of playing into my evaluation of him. Maybe I'm becoming more and more sour on guards of his size, but that's just kind of where I'm at on him, man. I think that he's very good. And I think that this class overall is also a lot better than what other people are making. So me putting him 23rd isn't like, I don't think that you're going to make it or anything like that. He just has more things in his way to being drafted very high and also succeeding in the NBA. So I'm kind of letting him work his way up my board a little bit.
That's interesting because, yeah, I think the thing that like I keep settling into with him is I do believe that I think he'll be like better half of the starting point guards in the NBA. Like I don't think he's gonna make an all-star or anything like that. But then I have to ask myself, like, okay, that's based on like who the point guards in the league are now.
Yeah.
So with like these positional shifts and things that we're talking about, like, is he that in 5 years? Is he that in 10 years? And that's where it becomes a value
Yeah.
proposition. And that's why I think you're not crazy for having that opinion. I think there are probably people that have similar concerns in important places in basketball. So I don't think you're alone on that front. But I like him quite a bit, though. I just really value the things that he brings, especially as a shooter, and I do think he can be reeled in. So I'm pretty optimistic. Another guy I'm really optimistic about is the next player on our board, Scotty Middleton. Are you are you part of the Middleton movement as well?
Yeah, I think that we are both subscribers of the Middleton movement. I think that a lot of us at No Ceilings really like Scotty Middleton. And if you go and look up any mock draft for the 2024 class, and not everybody is in sicko mode yet, Maxwell, where they're they're rigorously updating their boards before the college season starts. But yeah, I like Scotty a lot, man.
Yeah, I think he's got some advocates. I know Vicini had him mocked. I know Ricky O'Donnell had him. Like, he does that mock draft the day after every year, and he had Middleton there. That made me feel good because he's had some good calls on those the last couple of years with those sleeper freshmen. So love to see that. With Scotty Middleton, he's 6'6". He's going to be at Ohio State next year. The biggest thing for me coming into the year is, like, you just want to talk 3-and-D. I think Middleton's like resume is up there with any of the freshmen in this class. Outstanding shooting track record. Like, this is the guy who played at Sunrise against the best high school competition in the country and shot like over 40% from three every year. 46.8% on unguarded 3-point shots last season. Like, he is as knockdown of a knockdown guy that you can see.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, real deal shooter. I think he's got a bit of a shot making bag too. Like, if you watch the grassroots film, he can get to his spots in the mid range, and like, there were some of the games I watched where, like, they weren't going in, but it's like, I kind of like the process. I like how he's getting to these spots. I like how he can shoot over a hand in his face. And I think that he also, just off the ball in general, can move into his shot a little bit more. Like, he's not one of these guys that needs to be stood still, completely parked where he is. And he didn't get a lot of pick and roll reps because, like we mentioned, he was at Sunrise. He was alongside Modest Buzelis. So when you're alongside Modest Buzelis, you don't get to just have the ball all the time at the high school level. But it would only make up like 13% of his possessions. He did really well on those. Like, I think he knows how to get buckets at other spots on the court other than just being a 3-point shooter. I think as a passer, like, it's fine. Like, there's nothing to write home about. There's no glaring flaws, at least to me. I like, he has his moments, and he can at least skip it and make the extra pass. Not a selfish guy. I like the defense a lot. I think he's really active. He was always getting the toughest assignment. His motor's really hard. There's a lot of energy. Really deals with directional change as well. So he just has that, like, fluidity, agility, and toughness that I think is going to go a long way. And because he was getting the toughest matchups, I don't think he always looked outstanding, but I think he's really capable on that end. So here's my kind of two-prong, I guess, like, concerns. Is somebody who's going to the year, spoiler alert, with Scotty Middleton in the top 10 on their board. I think the first concern is what is the role going to look like at Ohio State? Because I think here's like, just quick overview of Ohio State. Bruce Thornton's coming back. He is an outstanding college point guard. He is going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And I think for anybody considering Ohio State the next few years, like, just going to be something to consider. You've got a really steady point guard there who shot like 40% from three, can set other people up, and is built like a bowling ball. So he's going to get the ball a lot. Like, that will not change. Do we think Roddy Gale takes a step forward? Jamison Battle transferred over from Minnesota. He was like a 17-point per game scorer before. Does he get back on the horse after he dealt with a lot of injuries last year? Zed Key is back. Does Felix Okpara take some sort of leap beyond being a play finisher? Dale Bonner's in the picture. At Baylor, I always thought he had a lot more juice than he got to show. So there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of bodies on this roster. Is he, going to get that time? If he does, I think he's going to be productive, because I do think he's going to shoot. I think he's going to hold his own on defense. Then it becomes the, like, quote unquote, like, pre-draft dilemma. The guy I've kind of thought about with him a little bit is Devin Vassell, where Devin Vassell has his first year at Florida State, doesn't play a ton of minutes, but, scores like 9 points per game, shoots really efficiently, mostly kind of a jump shooter. And then it was the next year, right? It was the next year that all of a sudden Devin Vassell's getting to operate with the ball in his hands. He's getting to the mid-range. He's running some pick and roll. Like, all of a sudden there's a shift in role, and it's like, oh wait, this guy who's 6'8" can, like, play defense, and he can shoot, and he can also do other stuff. Like, I think there's a really chance that that's Scotty Middleton's path. But again, I'm really optimistic on this guy. So maybe comparing him to a guy who just like rightfully got paid 130 mil is a little much. But yeah, I really like Scotty Middleton. I do think there are some questions about like just how big of an opportunity he gets this year. But I'll let you cook on Scotty.
I mean, I think that we saw the same thing with Sensabaugh last year, right? Like six man
Mm-hmm.
for a large part of the year, and then eventually just he's became too good to sit on the bench. I think that a Dirty Dancer, shout out to him,
Mm-hmm.
and shout out to everybody watching us on YouTube. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday to hang out with us. It means a lot. Uh, I I don't think that Ohio State gets Scotty Middleton if they're not like, we are going to play you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And Dirty Dancer also brought up a great point that they just do such a great job of showcasing their wing talent. When you go and look at McGowan, Sensabaugh, other guys
Even
too.
Justice Suing last year was a guy who they were like, hey, we
Exactly.
know you can get buckets in the mid range and attack the rim.
Exactly. So I think that Ohio State is primed to feature a guy like Scotty. Another grandpa in this class, I believe he's going to be 20 in November. So that
Oh,
has to
put
knock
him
him
in a
down.
home.
Put him in a home, team AARP. We talked about the shooting stroke. I think the handle is probably undersold a little bit compared to the shot, but I think it's quite nice. I think that there might be a little bit more on-ball juice to his game than what a lot of people are giving him credit for. Runs around the court like a maniac. I wish that he was a little bit better at going to the rim, especially handling contact, things of that nature. Can kind of shrink on the block when trying to get a shot. His passing, Maxwell, does worry me a little bit. I think that he has to kind of keep it simple. I think that he sees things. It's just getting it there is a little bit more difficult. I think that the defense is solid, not great. Screen navigation needs to be cleaned up. Has times where he just like absolutely dies on them. So, as someone else who has Scotty in the top 10, I'll be a little bit one to point that the screen navigation just flat out has me worried. I think that
Mhm.
his quickness does show up more on the defensive side of the ball, which if I had to pick one, that's where I would want it. I think that he can stick in front of some ones that he's defended well on drives, has the length to cover 1 through 3. The switching can be a little bit messy, hands his man off without tagging the next guy a lot in some of the film that I've seen. And it has a tendency to kind of play from behind. So overall, I think he's a very talented scorer with areas to improve. Maxwell, why I have him so highly ranked is that he's got like the NBA entry level skill set that you want from a player of his position. If he just shows improvements in those areas at all, like you're talking about, easily a top 10 prospect. And I think that Ohio State is going to do great for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like this this setup if he gets the time. Like my concern is still just like they've
Yeah.
got so much talent that there is a possibility that he could get squeezed if things aren't cooking for him right away.
Yep.
Next on the list, another kind of guy that feels like a lot of people on our crew are higher on. It's Omaha Baloo, who's going to be at
Mm-hmm.
Iowa State. First off, I like the fit at Iowa State a lot for him. This is a
Yes.
team that's kind of overachieved every year. They have a lot of guard talent. Like they
Yes,
got
they do.
Lipsy back from last year. You get Curtis Jones in from Buffalo. You get Kashawn Gilbert in. Like
My guy.
there
Love
are
Kashawn.
yeah. So Omaha Baloo at 6'9", what's he listed weight wise? 215, but he plays like he's 250 in a good way. Like
He's huge.
he's all over the place, man. He's gonna have a lot of setup guys, and I think Omaha Baloo
Mm-hmm.
right now is best served being a play finisher. So I think having
Yes.
all these guys who can kind of set him up, ideal setting for Omaha Baloo. Was talking to a friend in the draft space recently, Tyler Wilson at Prospecting NBA.
Okay.
I've just been kind of hitting up people that I don't talk to as much about basketball. I'm just saying, hey, like, who are the guys in this class that you like a lot, and the guys that you think stink, which is a pretty harsh way of phrasing it. But he kind of threw the question back at me, and Baloo was the guy that I brought up, and he was like, like, what's the biggest thing you see in Baloo? And like the phrase I used was like, he
Everything.
makes shit. He makes shit happen at a high level. Like Omaha
Yes.
Baloo is just like he creates events on the basketball court.
Yeah.
He's long, he's mobile, he's explosive. On defense, he's going to be a handful because he can move his feet, he can slide with guys. He's unbelievably physical. So if he puts his
Yes.
chest on you, it doesn't matter how big you are, how strong you are, how crafty you are, you're not going to get where you want. He's going to have a really high work rate. Like, guys are going to have to fight him on the glass every single possession. If you don't box out, he's getting a rebound on offense. That's going to lead to putbacks. It's going to lead to second chances for his team. Back to the defensive side, he just eats up space
Oh
so
man.
quickly. Like, he
Oh,
can get where
so
he wants. Yeah, really fast. And if guys do ever draw an advantage, he's going to work to recover. Like, the motor doesn't shut off. Offensively, I get the room for concern, right? Like, he's a straight line guy. He is a putback
yep.
guy. But he's really above the rim. So I don't worry about the finishing one bit. I think he has moments of kind of interesting passing flashes. He's just a jump off
Yes.
guy. I kind of think he can move the ball. Like,
Yeah.
if he can do anything on the perimeter, I think it really opens up a good world for him. I think with the shot, that's obviously the swing skill. He's going to take him. He's not a guy
Mhm.
who's going to like shy away. He hit a couple, I believe it was the McDonald's game. There was like one postseason game where he was taking and making them. My big
Yep.
concern with the jumper is that it's kind of messy. Like,
Yes.
the release point at the top is good. Like, I like how it
Mhm.
ends, but it has a very low starting point, and it's always a deep dip. Like, he is taking that thing down to his knees every single time, and then the energy transfer is very legs then arms. It is very, I'm
Yep.
jumping, I'm finishing the shooting motion. So
Ah,
I'd like to see it be a little bit more just consistent up his body, and it's a bit of a left to right ball path. But I've watched a lot of Omaha Blue because I just keep finding excuses to do
same.
it because I love watching him. So let's get your take on Omaha.
I could talk like we just do a podcast on Omaha. Like this dude is,
Yeah.
excuse my language, this dude is basketball porn for me. Like I cannot. He is. So everyone at No Ceilings knows that I was a big Tari Eason advocate.
Yep.
Love Tari Eason a lot. And I was talking to resident No Ceilings shot doctor the other day, Corey
Mhm.
Tullable. You probably seen him if you've friended the show.
Yep.
I was talking with him because I'm watching Omaha Blue, especially in preparation for this show. And I'll touch on the shooting first. So I texted him. I was like, "Hey man, what are your thoughts on his shot?" And we're talking, and I said to him that the load up on the shot is a little bit long. There seems to be multiple stages to the jumper where he's thinking about each step. It's catch,
Mhm.
line up, jump, release. It needs to be streamlined. Like you said, Maxwell, the top of the release point is beautiful. And I think that the touch indicators are there as well. But Corey was like, I think he's thinking about a shot too much right now, trying to get it to where it needs to be. But overall, I think that he can get, if that's the worst thing that he has to improve on offense, that's fantastic because he moves well to the rim. He's a very good cutter, willing screener, absolutely relentless rebounder. And you touch on the passing. I'm glad that you did because I wrote that he's not a bad connective passer. Most turnovers are based on trying too hard, Vice not being able to process. So I think that's a very important distinction to put out. Like, can he is he seeing things that are on the floor? That's great. Like that's first
Mhm.
step. Now, how can we get it there? That's where I think he needs to. And again, most of these passes are going to come with a ball in his hand instead of like a live dribble thing, which is fine. You don't need him to be, you know, uh, any like John Moran out there, for example. Burst and strength really pop on defense, capable of switching between power forwards and wings. Closing speed is so much fun, as is the recovery. Stays on his line when drivers get physical, so he kind of almost welcomes contact. Can gamble a little bit, but you know who else gambled on defense in college and turned out to be really good? Maxwell, Tari
Tari
Eason.
Eason, yeah.
Jaden McDaniels, another
Yeah,
one out of
yeah.
Washington. So, I I love him, man. Like, love the closeout technique, love the contesting on the side of the shot as opposed to getting right in front and giving the shooter landing space is so important in today's NBA. So he has like the appropriate closeout technique to where he's up in your stuff, but fouling on a jumper, I think, is going to be something that he just does not do. Maneuvers around screens
Yep.
really well, so long as he's not gambling on trying to poke out the ball. Has a potential, Maxwell, I think, to be the best perimeter slash post defender in this class. And that is saying a lot. So I'm
Mhm.
high on him, man. Definitely top 10 talent. I can watch him play basketball all day long.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just looking to see, yeah, a little bit more, yeah, actualization on the passing, and then, Yeah, just make the shots at like an okay enough clip that I could stomach it, and he'll be lotto for me come June. So we're gonna take one more break. We've got four guys, a couple of kind of sleepery guys in here too. So we'll go a little bit quicker on those guys, but
Yeah.
nevertheless, we got some big names still on the other side of the break here. So stick with us. All right, so we're gonna do a couple. We actually got a couple UCLA guys here back to back. Let's start with Eddie Mara, 7'3" out of Spain, just a gigantic human being. Um,
Yep.
I'm pretty high on him. I feel like relative to consensus. By the way, Rowan Kent, new to the No Ceilings team, phenomenal piece on him. NoCeilingsNBA.com. Go give.
Absolutely.
Mara is a little bit slow. I don't think he is the worst mover in the world on defense.
No.
That is my biggest concern, especially because it sounds like UCLA. I heard Mick Cronin on John Rossi's podcast wants to play him and Adembona together,
Hmm.
which could like I don't worry about Bona. I'm not worried about Bona guarding
At
space.
all.
Mara, I'm a little worried. I will say though, I think one thing he has going for him is that he takes up so much space, pick and roll
Hmm.
defense, because of his size that he's still really hard to play around. I do like how well he can kind of read the floor and know when it's time to make a rim rotation, where to put his hands. Like his understanding of the game is very strong, and that goes a long way for him defensively. He is very slow off the floor. Um, I just worry about situations where like he gets pulled away from the basket and he has to recover to it. Like, is he going to be able to do that? That's the big.
Hmm.
If he's not, everything becomes a lot trickier. On offense, very smooth, very polished, has sort of a buttery, touch out of the post.
Hmm.
Pass makes him extremely interesting. Sees the floor well. Can really facilitate out of the high post, out of the block. I think adding a jump shot and taking more threes is going to go a long way. He's shown an ability to do it here and there, but he needs to do what other bigs in this class like Aizen Almanza,
Yep.
Alex Sarr, like they took that leap. They said, "Hey, this is just going to be a thing I do all the time now." We need to kind of see that from Mara, because
Klingon's working on it too.
yes, yeah, Klingon's doing the same thing on those overseas tour. The overseas tour that UConn took, he was shooting threes. So I think it would not only add to his passing, but I just think the more offensive value he can pump into his game, there's always going to be something left on the table defensively because of how slow he is. Um, I think that would be really important for him to show a little bit more of that. But very interesting player. I think where he shakes out defensively is going to determine a lot. How do you feel about Mara? Because I kind of still have him like cusp of the lottery because I really buy the skill and just massive size. Because if he's going to pass like that at that height, that's really important.
Yeah, that's where I fell in love with him initially. Then upon my film rewatch, I think more concerns pop out the more that I watch him. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna put where I have him on my board out in public yet because I think I might like have overcorrected. But let's just say he went from top 10 to kind of like teetering around the end of the first round now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important, right, that if you are going to be an offensive big, let's just say that the defense is gonna be what it's gonna be. It's just maybe at average at best, like at the top, at his top version of himself. Let's just say that the defense is at NBA average at best. Is the passing really that good? I don't know. I think that he sees the floor very well, but is like the passing ball placement, looking his teammates open, kind of versatility, that quicker agility pass that some of these other guys like an Alperen Şengün and Nikola Jokic, Domantas Sabonis, you know, Daniel Tice in some aspects, pretty good passer for a big man in the NBA, right? So is he going to be able to do that? Is the offense going to be able to offset the defense, right? He's obviously, like you said, Maxwell, a huge human being. I think that he does move pretty well for his size. That's something that I put. Not only is the touch buttery, but I think that he can finish with either hand.
Yep.
Good footwork, has a good sense of knowing when to dive to the rim or pop out after a screen, which is huge. I wish that he was a little bit more impactful, on the actual screen portion of it itself. I worry about how he's going to handle more strength as he continues to play some of the larger opponents. Like even in college, the number of big men that you're going to come across is smaller, right? And then not only the number, but the quality of them are smaller too. So how are you going to kind of defend up against some of these higher end levels of defenders? The second jump is obviously scary, but luckily his standing reach is insane and his strength as it improves. Because again, this dude's very young. You know, he's a 2005
Mhm.
birth year, so he has that going in his favor as well. I think that he's exclusively going to be a drop big, which I think Coach Cronin is already kind of hinting to with the playing him and Bona at the same time. I'm worried about him. I have a lot of things that I'm
Mhm.
concerned about. I think that putting him in my top 10 was falling in love with like kind of the offensive flashes a little bit.
Is
Putting
that
him
what
at
you
the
got
back end
thinking?
of my first round is now like, okay, I acknowledge that there's some intriguing offensive skill sets that you have. How mobile are you gonna be at, at the NCAA level, against this more Americanized style of basketball? And then what are you going to look like defensively? Like, because if you're a revolving door as a five in the NBA, the number of schemes that you are going to be able to go and play into drastically lower. So that's kind of where I'm at with the day.
Awesome. So another UCLA player, I did the pronunciation guide on this one because I was like, I want to
Yeah.
make sure I get this right. Berke Bayuktuncel. Bayuktuncel is a player out of Turkey. Really, really interesting player. 6'9", 210. Pretty jumper, soft touch. It's not all the way there. I think this is like the big swing skill with him for me
Yeah.
is the shot. Because if he does shoot it, I think he's immediately interesting. Right now, I'm kind of taking a longer view with him. But he's a really great free throw shooter. So he's one of those guys who, like, past results have been around, off the top of my head, like 29, 31, up around 33%. So like
Yeah.
not bad, like real shot based on his age that all of a sudden he's just shooting consistently and well. Um, you see like there's been like the Jaime Jaquez comps and you see a little bit of it in
Yeah.
terms of the creation where like a little bit better of a passer than you would expect him to be, maybe based on how the numbers look. Has a little bit of herky jerkiness, uses his body and his footwork to get separation and get to his spots pretty well. One of those guys who's not going to blow you away athletically, but like it just doesn't seem to be an issue in international competition. A lot of times he's still getting where he needs to go on the floor. I do worry about just like in college at the high major level, like what does that level of athleticism look like? And is it an issue? Either in
Yeah.
terms of how he's able to produce on offense or how he sticks with guys on defense. I do think he's smart enough and long enough that defensively, I'm not sure like he's going to struggle at the college level. I do worry a little bit about like who does he guard best in the NBA? Like, is he quick enough for
Hmm.
some of these wings? Is he strong enough for fours? Like, that's where I'm a little bit hung up. Where are you at with Bearcat?
So another lefty shooting prospect, another left-hand dominant player. I'm going to try to do my best to bring up the number of left-hand players that we have in this draft class. I think he's a
Mhm.
good athlete. I think that he knows how to use his body well too. Probably more sneaky athletic because he is, pale European prospect. But I think that he looks super mobile on the court, especially compared to the competition. And
Hmm.
he's been featured a lot in Turkey, in Turkey, right? Like not only just in European play, but in the FIBA tournaments as
Yep.
well. Like this guy has
Mhm.
consistently been a performer, right? So this guy might be familiar to a lot of you who pay attention to FIBA because
Yeah,
he's
U19s.
consistently 18, 19s, like
Mhm.
all of them, right? Plays with a ton of swag too. Like when this guy has it going, he's a lot of fun to watch. I love that he has a knack for cutting to the rim. His closing speed is pretty fun at times, right? I think that he's a pretty good ball handler for like a power forward or a wing. The shot is pretty solid. The arc is a little bit of a line drive. I know that the assist to turnover numbers aren't favorable, but when you go back and kind of watch the film, I
Yep.
think that some of the plays where he throws real dimes and like teammates just aren't ready. I think that sometimes he can pass better than what the expectation would be. And I can't tell you how many times I went back and watched him make a read that his teammate was like, "How the heck did the ball touch my hands just now?" And then the defense is running back with it, right? And again, kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier, I think that the issue with him isn't processing; it's kind of playing too fast and trying to figure some stuff out. The defense is where I worry, much like you, Maxwell. The effort oscillates. The initial effort is nice, but the consistency on recoveries, I think, needs improvement. Like I said, closeouts are good. When he gets beat, it's kind of like, okay, I'll try better next time. Um, the footwork needs to be cleaned up a little bit when defending the drives. But he does have the length to really bother some shots. So I don't think that he's going to have issues going around screens. It's really whenever he's going to be put on an island against a really good ball handler that I'm going to be like, okay, like, how are you going to improve on this side of the ball? I like him. He's kind of teetering around the lottery for me. But UCLA is so deep, like not only with just talent, but with these international imports that he's going to be kind of one of these, if he plays, prospects for me. I think that he could really pop.
Well, and like I was just texting you the other day, like Dylan Andrews, this guy, like I was doing film work on, and I was like, oh man, like he's better than I realized. Like there's a lot of guys on UCLA, and that could kind of make for a weird fit. I'm totally with you on the passing. Like I just want to reaffirm that too, because I think if you're just looking at the numbers and you have dug into his film, like I kind of buy it, and I think like where I'm going to just talk again about how I feel like I've already missed on Keontae George. Like one thing Keontae did really well was like he just refined. Like and you saw in summer league, like at Baylor, he'd get way too forceful with certain passes or certain shots, and then just like, hey, you scaled it back and it's fine. I think you've got to hope he's more that than like Baylor Shireman is the guy you use on the other side of that equation. Where like Baylor Shireman, like once a game, will make a decision where it's just like, dude, what were you thinking? Like, what was that? Like, if he's gonna have that kind of a trajectory where it's just like, hey, this is just part of the game that you have to live with, is he wants to get fancy with it every now and then, and it doesn't work. Like, then I'm a little bit more concerned. But I do buy it. I really think he's got some juice to him there. DJ Wagner is next on the docket for us, 6'3" guard at Kentucky. I do think he plays really hard. I think he is, which is like, I feel like a lot of people heard that and like, he's about to say this guy's not good, because that's
here comes the backhand of the compliment.
No, I'm struggling a lot with DJ Wagner. So he is really quick, and we see an opening. He is hard to get out of the paint. Like that is where he is determined to get, and he succeeds in getting there a lot of the time. He'll find ways to get to a shot at all three levels. There's some quickness, some slither, some burst, and I do think he's pretty tough, and I think he's like more than willing to play through contact at the basket. The jumper is confusing to me. So coming into the year, this is a guy that like a lot of the places, and I'm trying to pull up these numbers, he has been like sub 30% from three in a lot of contexts. So and he's also like 175 pounds. So name the NBA guards that are under 180 pounds that shoot under 30% from three. So like that's a real cause for concern. But I will say there are times where he's very exciting as a shot maker, and like he'll like pull up with it from deep, or like he'll hit really impressive shots where I'm just like, wait, then why are the numbers what they are? Like it gives me a little bit more optimism that he can turn it around, that like he's shown the ability to be capable. As a passer, I don't think he's like, I think sometimes he gets kind of, I see people talking about him as if he's just this like bucket getting scoring guard. I don't think he's a black hole. Like I think he's a guy that plays with his eyes up, especially in transition. Like he's not totally reliable. Don't get me wrong. Like he gets another guy who gets too sped up, but can make reads, throw the ball with good zip. I believe in him to be a solid creator for others. Defensively, I think there's some toughness and activity that show up at times. I think his timing for like a dig can be really good. I worry about the consistency of his off-ball defense, because given his size, like there's just not a lot of room for error with guys this height that are skinny in particular. That has to be there all the time. And I do think that he's going to get pushed around quite a bit. I think there's a chance it gets ugly if we're talking NBA projection for him. But I do think that he is athletic enough and has some real skills that there's a chance that it just kind of works itself out. I'm not super willing to bet on a guy with these flaws. I'd rather just have, I'd rather be pulled up by them, like be like, oh, hey, I was wrong, than, the other way around. Where is DJ Wagner for you currently?
This is funny because I was lower on Collier, and now you're lower on Wagner.
Okay.
I'm a Wagner over Collier guy, and I know that the soundbite and the aggregation at this point of the podcast could come back to nip me in the butt. But that's just kind of where I'm at right now, man. I love the confidence on the pull-up shot. I think he's a very good ball handler, like very,
Mhm.
very good. Has a number of, hezzies, kind of hostage dribble, very good manipulator with the ball in his hand. I think that he's got a very nice float game. The thing that
Mhm.
stands out about DJ to me is that he very ever rarely does he ever feel rushed. You know, he's also
Okay.
not contact averse. I think that he's like
He's
not a
tough, like genuinely tough. Yeah.
right. So if you're looking at like the frame, I get it, but watch the film. Like this dude doesn't play scared at all to go and mix it up. The shooting form, Maxwell, I think it looks good, but the results are a little bit of a mixed bag. To me, that when we're talking about the frame, I think that the only concern that I have with like the slender build of him right now is just like the base of him because I think if you go and look at his misses, they're typically short, and I kind of
Mhm.
wonder if that's like a strength thing. So if he can put on like some good functional strength, I think that's going to help out the rest of his game. He doesn't have an over reliance of the floater, or I'm sorry, he does have an over reliance of the floater to get his shot up. But I don't think that it's really going to hurt him because if we're looking at guards that can score at 3 levels, you kind of have to have a good float game. I'm not worried about the pull up mid range elbow game like a Collier has with him because I think that the touch is going to improve over time. The rebounding rate also, Maxwell, not super encouraging. So if you're looking to kind of like ding him, and I know he's a guard, but Maxwell, you and I both know that when we kind of look at our models for like what makes a draftable player, an successful NBA player, like even guards have good rebounding rates.
They
So
do. Yeah, that's like a big thing that people don't often note. Like I think a lot of people overlook rebounding just too much in general, but like if
yeah.
nothing else, it's a very strong indicator of who sticks in the NBA and who doesn't.
Yeah, like there's not very many examples of even kind of like middling NBA players that weren't good rebounders like before they
Mhm.
got drafted, right? I think he shows good signs of help in deny defense. When he screens, it kind of feels like he is done on that defensive possession. It's like, okay, again, I'm gonna just try again next time. I think I'm gonna have this. He's gonna kind of have the same concerns that most other guards do when being drafted, which again is like I'm higher on him, but he's kind of like in that late teens to me. So I'm not sitting here proclaiming him that I have him like within my top 10 or in my lottery. I'm just trying to play it really safe with guards, man. Like especially these kind of like 6'4" and under level guards. I'm very sober when it comes
I'm
to
scared.
analyzing
Yeah.
them. I'm terrified, man, because like I
Mhm.
loved Kennedy Chandler. I loved Jan Montero. I loved a number of these kind of like undersized guards because of their vision and their ability to pass the ball. And some of them were even really good point of attack defenders and shooters. But man, it's like it's super hard to hit in the NBA at that size. So like Scoot Henderson, if people are ready to say, "Oh, well, look at Scoot, he's doing great in
Mhm.
preseason." That dude is a freak of nature
He's a
physically.
tank. He's a tank. Like he's so hard
And
to move.
And so are we sitting here willing to say that guys like Isaiah Collier and especially DJ Wagner, do they
Mhm.
clear that threshold? No. Are they elite level shooters? I don't think so. So like you have to be
Mhm.
like elite at that size to make it in the NBA at these skill sets. And I just want those guys to prove to me that at the college level that they're going to be elite, let alone in the NBA.
For sure. I think that's completely fair and level-headed, and I think that's the way that people kind of should be looking at guards going forward. It's just like understanding that the challenge in that point guard is now what people thought backup bigs were 3 years ago, where people acted like, oh yeah, you can just like go get one. Like you can just go get one like whenever. And it's like, that's your point
People
guard.
still
It's like
talk about
most
bigs
people,
that way.
it drives me insane. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. That's another topic for
Go
another
get a
day.
big.
But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's a lot of teams that I have a rooting interest in that have struggled mightily due to their inability to secure a reliable backup big man in the last couple of years. But I think with point guards, it's just
Yeah.
especially true just because of the world and the fact that there are a lot more people 6'4" and under than 6'4" and above. Like there are just a lot of good guards that have a really hard time sticking in the NBA and that are talented all over the world of basketball that NBA teams can go and acquire at any time. Let's end with a bigger guard on that note. A
Yeah.
guy that has been a late riser, well, a late riser for both of us, but a guy who
Mhm.
um, started the year pretty high on boards. I mean, obviously we're super early in the draft cycle, but was a guy that I had a little bit more skepticism toward initially. That has
Mhm.
sort of started to win me over the more that I'm being in the film and the more that's kind of coming out. Stephon Castle at UConn, 6'6", 215. So coming in with that size that you like to see from a guard. Castle is someone who I watched in person at an Under Armour event during his final AAU season. Um, he is very interesting, especially in terms of just how he gets to his spots on the court. He likes to kind of use pace and manipulation and footwork to get where he wants. He's very smooth. He's not a guy
Mhm.
that's like real jittery up, step back, step forward. I'm a blur. Like it's very controlled. Um, and that control kind of extends into his finishing, where he's really good at contorting and converting amongst the trees. He's a really savvy interior passer. I think that he can make multiple reads, but I think where I feel most comfortable with him as a passer is like when he gets deep in the paint, finding ways to wrap it around, get it to the big man, dump it off. The shot is weird, and it's probably like the biggest just confusion area for me. So I'm generally willing to buy the shot on most younger players, but he is a guy where like he'll make a lot of pull up threes and then miss a lot of pull up twos, and like the numbers off the catch aren't great, and it's the sample size isn't great because he played at Newton, which is like a good basketball high school, but it's not one of these Montverts where it's like, oh yeah, Synergy just has like all 35 of their games
Yeah.
right there. So it is a little bit tricky of a projection because it's just kind of hard to know where the shot is going to settle. So he was 36% in Under Armour on catch and shoot threes, which if he's that, like that's where he needs to be. I do worry just because the pull up is a little bit dicey that if guys aren't respecting him, a lot of people are talking about him in the mold of Andre Jackson because that's kind of the role that
Mm.
he's assuming. Andre was so fast that like he could really
Yes.
get where he wanted. And even though teams like we're playing way, way off of him and it really diminished what you do in the half court, that's a real problem. But with Castle, I don't know that he's like so fast that he's going to just eat up that ground and still get where he wants. Um, with the shot, yeah, I think as long as he shows off ball value, he's going to be okay. Sometimes on the shot, he drifts to the left, and sometimes the ball comes out a little bit flat. Those are just the two kind of easy observations that are there. If he keeps
Yeah.
his men honest on offense, that's all he needs to be. Defensively, I think I'm maybe a little bit lower than him. Effort and consistency need to be there all the time, especially if the shot is going to be shaky at all. Motor kind of comes and goes guarding the ball, a bit of a gambler. But I think he's competent guarding the ball. And I think if he's on ones and twos, he's going to be fine. So I'm not like dreading it. I just don't think, again, this Andre Jackson thing comes up a lot. And I think like there's just real seismic differences. But I think Castle is so much steadier and more
Yeah.
reliable that I feel quite a bit better about him. And I think the shot's further along too. So Castle is going to be a top 10 guy for me. The reports out of UConn, the work he did on their overseas tour where he led the team in scoring. There's just a lot to like, and he's kind of in that Lonzo Ball, that Anthony Black mold of these big guards that really know how
Mhm.
to play. Where are you at with Castle?
Top 5 right now, man. Like, really like him a lot. One of the only few prospects, Maxwell, you touched on it earlier, that I felt compelled to just like significantly vault up my board on the film rewatch with him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what my issue. Like, I kind of want to go back in time. You know, if you've been watching Loki too, I wish I could, just kind of, time slip a little bit and go back there and kick my former self in the whats. But I love his intersection of size and ball skill, man. Great stride
Mm-hmm.
as he goes to the rim. Very mature approach to how he attacks, when to pass and when to shoot. Feels like he just kind of floats out there. That there isn't a load time to his leaping or his acceleration. It's very graceful, very elegant. Shows a lot of promise, I think, Maxwell, in that mid-range game, and
Mm-hmm.
has a nice feel for changing his shot trajectory whenever it's challenged. So, like you were saying, that contortion, the body shielding. I'm just a big fan of all of that. Can hit some pretty advanced reads, but sometimes I think he has shown to be a little bit too confident in that ability. Uh, he can hit the corner man in the shooting pocket, which is a very important skill for like these jumbo guards, driving to the rim, whipping it out to the corner man,
Mhm.
right wherever he needs to get the shot off. That's huge. He's good at the dump off when driving, finds the opposite side when driving, and has a real knack for looking his man open. So I get that these
Yeah.
Andre Jackson comparisons are pretty apt in a lot of different ways, but it's smooth versus just explosive with how it was with Jackson. On defense, I like the footwork, man. I think that he's got solid closeouts. I think the size looks like it will help him be a more versatile defender at the college level. I wish my big thing is like his hands get kind of heavy on defense a lot, where he just isn't like trying to present himself big, and I think that will help him
Mhm.
out a lot. My question is, Maxwell, if you don't have do you have anything else with Castle that you want to kind of put out there?
No, I think the last thing I want to hit on is like he's another like plays with pace guy who I don't think is slow. Like I think that he just does such a good job of freezing when he changes speeds that like he's just one of those guys where
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. Like guys will just come to a halt in the middle of a
Deceleration.
dribble
Yeah.
sequence with the decel, and like everyone off the ball will just like freeze up and just like stand up, and guys get open off of it. I'm like, no, you got to keep moving.
Yeah.
Like you don't come to a halt when the guy dribbling comes to a halt. So yeah, I think Castle is really interesting. And I think, yeah, like there are those key differences there. And I think that the shot being so much further along at the same age compared to Andre Jackson is a big one. But yeah, so what was, because you brought this up, like what is
Yeah.
the kind of closing topic we want to end on?
Yeah, I just want to ask you. So we talked a lot about these guys. I want to kind of get where you are today. Like, how would
Hmm.
you rank these prospects to kind of close out the show?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go Edwards, Walter,
Mm,
Castle,
mm.
uh, Collier. I don't know if I like that one, but we're going live. We're doing it
You're
live.
married to it. Yep.
Yep. Scotty Middleton, Omaha Blue, Ademara, Cody Williams, Berke. I think that's all of them.
Okay, so I'm gonna go Justin. I gotta go Jacoby. I'm gonna go Stephon Castle next. I'm gonna go Scotty Middleton, Omaha Blue, Cody Williams. I'm gonna go DJ Wagner, Isaiah
Mhm.
Collier, Berke Bayuk, and then closing out with a Damara.
Okay. I forgot Wagner. I would slot Wagner right behind Cody Williams. It's probably where I would end up with him. So
Okay, fair.
yeah, that was a fun group, and we got more. We got more. So come back next week. We're going to cover more of the top freshmen in the 2024 draft class. But before we sign off, Stephen, what have you got in the works this week at No Ceilings?
Yeah, so this week, last year for those who read No Ceilings last year at noceilingsnba.com, it's 100% free. You should go check it out. I opened up the season with two kind of like think pieces, right? Where I started with my player types, and then I did, the shiny new toy piece where I kind of really broke down like how many freshman prospects get drafted and in any given year, and then what is like the projection from other draft outlets and who are some freshmen that I like. I'm kind of doing the same thing this upcoming Tuesday, where I'm going to be going freshman, but I'm also going to be breaking down other player types, right? So guards, wings, forwards, bigs, international, OTE, and G League Ignite as well. So I think that that's going to be an interesting way to kind of like center ourselves, reset kind of our expectations a little bit on who we like where, and just kind of see how the season progresses from that point on, man. And then I
Yeah.
got a couple player interviews lined up,
Mhm.
which won't kind of spill the names yet, but some pretty interesting ones. So
They're
excited
good.
about that. How
They're
about you?
good.
How about you, brother?
Yeah. Yeah. So by the time this is up, we'll have out my written piece on noceilingsnba.com, a full scouting report on Milo Suzan. I also did a video interview with Milo Suzan, and the podcast with Milo Suzan will also be up. So Milo Suzan Day on October 16th at noceilingsnba.com. So go check that out. He is a guy that I don't want to, spoil too much if you haven't listened or watched yet, but I am a very big fan, very,
Mm.
very big fan of how he sets up his plays, how he makes plays, and he's coming into the year with a first round grade from me. Was a guy I liked a lot, and then I just did the film dive, and I was like, I gotta do something with this guy. So was
Also in
super
my
honored
first
that was
round,
part of it. Mm-hmm.
Also in
Yeah.
my first round. Really good shooter too. Like the jumper.
Yeah, and he took more as the year went on, so I'm really optimistic about that. But that'll be out as well. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure you're subscribed on all platforms. NoSlingsNBA.com. Last week we announced Rowan Kent added to the team. Ignacio
Yeah.
Ricido added to the team. Big name in international basketball
Yeah.
now with NoSlingsNBA.com. We've got more announcements to come. So make sure you are plugged in on our YouTube channel, our podcast feed, and our Substack. So join us on all facets. And until then, next time, Sickos, thank you for joining us. We will see you later.
Much love, y'all.